Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, hello and welcome to Palladio Reviews Final Fantasy 15. Quick and dirty, it's an 8 out of 10. This is a good game with some great moments marred by some bad design choices and some pacing issues. If that's what you were here for, then, well, take it easy, guys. Now for the rest of you, let's get started on this. First off, the good. The game is beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous. Well-designed characters, well lip-synced. The environments are beautiful. Creatures are beautiful. Enemies are beautiful. It's all extremely well done. Now, you do pay for that in some load times and some small pop-in issues, but for the most part, those aren't that big of a deal. Sound is really good. The music is mostly forgettable, but not bad. But Stand By Me is a standout thing from this. Like, I know it's a remake of the song. Love the original song, but this version is probably my favorite so far, and it is well used both times it is used. Characters, the main characters are all pretty well done. All four of them are pretty distinct. They're pretty cool. They're pretty flavorful. And the main characters aren't the issue with the characters. And even the main characters have a couple of moments when they really need to chill out. But they all eventually get over that, and they're all pretty well done and pretty well designed. Presentation. Presentation is probably what this game does best. While it's beautiful, it puts things at you in a way that it's more like interactive media, and it all flows together very well. Combat, the way characters interact with each other, the way the enemy interacts with you. Also, just a quick side note, does anyone remember this trailer from ages ago? I think I'll do another video and talk about that later. Anyway, but yeah, no, presentation, this all flows and feels very authentic. It feels very real. The world feels alive. They did a very good job with that. Alright. Now we're going to start working on the cons. So, you might want to get ready for this, because I'm going to rant a bit. Not biggest con. No, you know what? Biggest con. Biggest con in this game is the combat. The combat in this game is awful. It is terrible. It's beautiful to watch, don't get me wrong. So I can understand if you're a fan of watching it unfold. But insofar as depth and diversity goes, it is terrible. Oh, where do I even start? Your main forms of dealing damage aside from auto attack are warp strikes and link strikes. Link strikes don't always happen though. But a lot of what you're doing in combat is positioning yourself so that you can perform these link strikes to hopefully make combat go better. Warp strikes, on the other hand, you perform by warping to various points on the map and then warping back to the enemy. Those are a bit more damaging. No, those aren't as damaging as link strikes, and link strikes have AP abilities that can boost them up to a respectable level. So that's what Luna is supposed to look like originally? Anyway. But the issue is that fairly early on, enemies just start becoming meatbags. They just start becoming these massive walls of hit points that take a while to beat down no matter how you do it. Now, you do have other options in combat, mainly in the form of calling on your allies for support, where they perform special attacks for you, because that's what we want, right, guys? We want our allies to do all the work for us while we pop around. Sorry, I enjoy this game. I like this game, so it's going to sound weird that I'm being so harsh on it. But I can't just forgive the flaws of it. In combat, it's not well done. You do have the Arminger Chain, which is your own personal limit break. But again, because of the manner of which hit points work, you're either just going to wipe out the smaller enemies with it, or you're going to dent the larger ones. And for a limit break style attack, that's kind of disappointing. You would expect that level of performance on Reno and Rude. What? No, I mean, you wouldn't expect that level of performance on Reno and Rude. You'd expect that level of performance on, like, a final boss or a big boss to where, yeah, your limit break's barely going to scratch it. But it's really disappointing to build up the Arminger Chain and just have it kind of do work. It just, at least it has that big attack at the end that looks really cool, right? That's a thing. Well, I mean, you can't actually miss doing that attack, and that kind of sucks. But anyway, so that's the basics of combat. Maneuver around, try to get into places for link strikes. Wow, Prompto was much different originally. Gladio wasn't. Anyway, that's the first part of combat that's bad. I already covered part of it, but enemies being hit point sponges is a pretty big issue. Because I do absolutely think that you need to have more complicated gameplay than punching things in the face over and over. But just trying to maneuver around your enemy's flanks isn't very fun. Guarding is also an issue, and not because of guarding itself. Guarding itself works fairly well. The issue is that about 20 to 30% of the time, enemies have attacks that cannot be blocked, but you have no way of knowing which attacks these are. So you'll be in the middle of a blocking animation, and an enemy will hit you with something that looks like a normal attack that just knocks you aside. Now, you do have attacks that are well telegraphed that are supposed to be dodged. Obviously, giant horned thingy comes charging at you. You don't want to be there when it reaches where you're at. But I dislike the entire, well, you did everything right, but you're still going to take damage thing. Which dovetails into taking damage. Which, I know that's a normal RPG thing. That's not what I'm getting at here. What I'm getting at is there's no healing magic. You do all of your healing via potions. Which doesn't sound so bad. Okay, yeah, and Ignis gets an ability that lets him heal you once every, I don't know. It's a long cooldown, 30 seconds to a minute. I think it's about a minute. So that taking damage isn't something you want to do because you have to buy those healing potions. And that becomes an issue because enemies don't drop gil! They don't drop gil, guys. For some reason, they took one of the major complaints from Final Fantasy VIII and Final Fantasy XIII and said, you know what? We need to do that again. We need to make it to where gil can't be obtained via normal means. What? So then in order to continue with your potion obsession, you have to hunt down marks. Now, I'm complaining about this because I do think it's an issue. But I did every hunt, they're called hunts, I believe. Every hunt I came across, and I did not start having money issues until up near the end of the game. So, I mean, they do support it to an extent, but the issue is that you need these potions, because there's no healing magic. Because for some reason, lately, Square has a hard-on against healing magic. I don't get it, I don't know what the deal is, but there you go. Which dovetails into Royal Arms. Royal Arms are such a cool idea, and you don't use them. Unless you want to drink potions like a drunken maniac, you don't use Royal Arms, because it's a couple of reasons. One big issue is that they don't deal enough damage compared to the amount of hit points they drain from you. There is one exception to that rule, and I'll get to that, but for the most part, you don't want to use them because it's so detrimental to you, for a couple of reasons. The first is obviously the potion thing, and the way that it's not exactly that easy to maintain a decent rate of gil. So, using Royal Arms quickly becomes expensive. But the second thing is, this is an AI issue, and this should have been easily fixable. Your buddies don't want to pick you up when you go down. I don't understand that. And the major issue with that is when you go down, you start losing. Also, Versus 13 looks like a much more interesting game than what we got in the end. I'm just throwing that out there. Anyway, your buddies don't pick you up. They just, I don't know, they jerk around. And since you lose maximum hit points the longer you're on the ground, you tend to not wait for that. Which, once again, goes back to popping potions like you're addicted. Which, by the end of this game, I'm positive Noctis had a potion addiction for me. But that, like I said, if Royal Arms did more damage, if they made up for that, or if they didn't have a cost, or, hey, here's a great idea, you know that MP bar we're using for warping around? Use that for it. All of a sudden, it makes a lot more sense to try and conserve MP, or to warp away to safety when necessary. All of a sudden, that becomes an actual part of your offense, having to go defensive so that you regain your magic points so you don't go into stasis in the middle of combat. But no, we didn't get that. We got the hit point version. The one Royal Arm that doesn't completely drain your hit points is totally worth it, but that's 1 out of 13. Because they were going with the theme of 13, because it was originally Final Fantasy Versus 13. Where am I at? Where am I at in my cons? AP! AP does not accrue normally from monster kills. Again, somehow they thought this was a good idea. No, instead AP happens when you, okay, I just said not from monster kills, not from normal monster kills. You have to either do warp strikes or link strikes to get AP from normal monster kills. Just punching in the face doesn't cut it. And there are issues with this. Now, there are other ways to garner AP before I continue onward, and contrary to what I just said, killing a Cactuar does actually give you pretty large points of AP, but they're so rare it's not funny. But sometimes your allies will suggest tactics in mid-combat, and if you perform those tactics, then you get AP, like 10 per, and it's random, and it's rare. And sometimes those aren't really intuitive things. Like they tell you to break the limbs off of weaker enemies, when in reality, you're just going to kill the enemy. If it's a weaker enemy, then yeah. If it's a stronger one, then it makes perfect sense. But that wasn't usually the case in the rare times that it happened for me. Entire way through the game, I think I was around 50 hours. And they set it on appropriate enemies maybe once. But that's just one of the different types they do. But anyway, it's just so rare that it's not a good way of accruing AP. You also get it for various events throughout the game, which once again, I think the point was to kind of forestall grinding, but it also puts it at a point where you're just not getting enough AP to do anything with. And considering the prices of some of the stuff you need to spend AP on, it's a little ridiculous. And I guess I'll move into that. No, wait, I'll do summons first. Summons were a good idea executed poorly. Another good idea executed poorly. And that's because they just don't pop up that often. They have different ways of activating. And Ramuh is the most common. He just activates the longer combat goes on, but even then I saw him maybe 3 times throughout the entire game. I saw Leviathan once. Although it was hilarious, let me tell you this story. I was in one of the final areas, and all of a sudden it pans back, and I was like, well, it's gotta be Ramuh. And then Leviathan pops up, and I said, there's no water. And then the camera pans over to a sewage lid. And Leviathan comes busting up out of the sewer to help. But I would have much rather had a lengthy cooldown and done a lot less damage and had actual control over the summoning of my own summons. Because I did not want to see Atlas, I did not want to see Shiva. I once saw Leviathan. This is in 50 hours of playing, and I had, not Leviathan, I had Ramuh for at least, I would say 38 of those hours. 3 times in that time period. It's just, but the thing is, you don't need them, really. They just accelerate combat. But it's just, the execution is poor. If you're going to have them, then have them be a part of it, not just randomly be like, oh, I realize I guess part of it's at the whim of the gods, but that doesn't make for good gameplay. It makes for good presentation, which is what I said before. I was like, oh, Ramuh decided to help me, that's cool. But it's not a huge thing because combat doesn't revolve around them and it doesn't really require them. It's kind of nice when it happens. Alright, let's get into magic. I don't know who was sitting in that meeting going, hey, you know what? People absolutely hated the draw system from Final Fantasy VIII. Let's make a worse version of that. Why would you ever think this is a good idea? You have magic points already. Why not use them? And I realize I'm sending mixed signals here, but let me explain. Magic essence is drawn from various draw points you usually find near camps and toward the end of dungeons to prepare you for boss fights. You then use this magic essence to make magic spells. Now, here's the cool part though. You can mix items with those magic spells to make different types of spells. Like you can make Quadcast. You can have it to where you cast a spell 4 times in a row. Or you can make it to where you're healed when you cast spells. Or you can just do a variety of things. And it's pretty cool. That part of the system is pretty cool. You get 3 casts at baseline. You have a maximum stack of 99 essence you could use. And in order to make stronger spells, you have to use more essence. 3 casts. It's between a 20 and a 30 second cooldown, so you can't even spam them to speed up fights that way. What was the thought process that went on here? Because literally the only thing I can think of is that someone was like, you know what? Let's make sure they don't use magic. Now, you can go to a certain extent to circumnavigate that by using the AP system to beef up your magic. But here's the issue with that. Do you remember how I talked about how slow AP gain is? Well, in order to absolutely beef up your magic, it requires 1300 or more to beef up the attack power on it to 110 baseline, which puts it at the RS stage, second stage of spells. And it takes 1300 more AP to make it to where you get 5 casts per. So, all in all, in order to make magic sort of serviceable, you have to spend 2600 AP in a system that does not want to give you AP. And that means forestalling getting any other skills or abilities. And trust me, you need other skills a lot more than you need to make magic mediocre. I don't know what the thought process there was. It is a bad design choice, and it does not lend itself well to the game. Finally, we have the story itself and the side characters. The story is okay up until Chapter 10. At Chapter 10, it suddenly becomes a rushed, mangled mess. You're introduced to characters who seem important who disappear a chapter later, and you also have the main characters suddenly going wonky for no apparent reason. You also are introduced to the Grand Chapter 13, which is, by God, some of the worst gameplay segments I've ever played in an RPG. I don't know what the thought process was there either. They suddenly went, hey, you know what? They've been playing this one game this entire time for 40 plus hours. Let's make them play a different game now. For several hours. On end. Alone. Ugh. Ugh. I don't know what happened there. I don't think they know what happened there. It just sinks. In that last little bit, it sinks. And I personally, no spoilers, but I think that ending is a pretty big kick in the nuts to anyone who's been following this game since 2006. Alright, so that's about it. I still stand by it being an 8 out of 10. Those issues are massive, but the parts that work so well. They are so beautiful. Look at this! Also, by the way, I'm going to take time out of my review to point this out. This game, this looks fun. He has magic. He has summons. He has extra EX arts. Holy shit, Square Enix. What were you thinking? You had a good game here. What did you turn it into? Well, it's still a good game, but I think you know what I'm saying. Anyway, that's about all I got for you. If you liked, then please feel free to poke that like button and maybe even subscribe. But if you don't, well, that's okay too. And I will be seeing you